I think you said that he could have gotten more separation.
There were some technique fundamentals in the receiver that weren't perfect in the 80s. I had to throw in a few points of criticism.
You hate to see a game that was where there was that many points scored and was that exciting and that many swings in momentum, etc., effectively get ended by ref.
What was it like playing in March Madness? I mean, we have it going on right now.
But playing it was amazing. I mean, like, that's kind of your whole goal is to just be a part of that. It's such a special thing where the whole country is tuning in, and anything is really possible, you know.
When you first started playing football, you know, did you always want to play in college?
No, I was growing up. I was a big baseball guy. Loved baseball. And then 8th grade, I remember I got a call from my uncle, Coach Nagel. He's like, hey, I got the job. And I was just like, all right, I'll play football for you.
Like the video if you like the video. Ring the notification bells. Have a phenomenal weekend. As always, we'll catch you in the next one.
All right, man. We're live. Thanks for coming back on, Matt. I appreciate it. We were talking. Of course, man. Yeah, we were talking on Instagram about your thoughts on NIL and some of the portal stuff. We were just talking about your interview with James Boyd. That was a great interview. Great player, man. Great athlete, big hitter. I believe he played with Derek Fox, who is my favorite safety of all time at Penn State. Derek Fox played in his like breakout year was really '99. He picked off I think he picked off, I forget the player's name from Miami, but when they played in Miami in '99,
Kenny Kelly was the quarterback.
Kenny Kelly, yeah. So you would know that. Thanks for telling me that.
But that team was stacked. I mean, they had Santana Moss and Reggie Wayne and Bubba Franks and James Jackson. That was just the following year. That team went to the Sugar Bowl, but Penn State got that team about 1 year early. But I mean, they had Ed Reed and Rump and Damian Lewis, Dan Morgan, Jerome McDougal and Jamal Green. I mean, that team was stacked, and that was a great back and forth game.
Well, that team actually went on, to be like one of the best dynasties ever. That there was a revival of Miami football,
Yeah, I mean, Butch Davis did a nice job turning around the program there, and then he obviously left for the Browns, I think, because the following year, that team that Penn State beat in Miami that year, obviously Kenny Kelly moved on. He actually went on to play baseball. He was drafted, and Ken Dorsey wound up being the starting quarterback. They wound up going 11-1. They got shut out of the national championship game. Their one loss was at Washington that year. I remember that team, and they wound up blowing out Florida in their Sugar Bowl that year. And then the following year, they came back and were undefeated. They played their first game of the season at Penn State. That's when Adam Talaferro, ran on the field, led the team on the field. But that was, a real talented team. I mean, they had, Kellen Winslow and Shockey and Andre Johnson, Darryl Jones. I mean, that team arguably was the most talented team, I think, to ever play a game at Beaver Stadium in the past 30 years, that in the 05, Ohio State team. So, yeah, I mean, that 99 Miami game certainly, one of the better wins in the past 20 years. Actually, my goodness, man, dating myself probably the past 30 years.
Yeah,
Penn State football.
Yeah, and you said you were at that game because you were at, like, every game from some year on, man. You were there for, like, every game.
Almost every home game. Yeah, almost every home game from pretty much, like, 2002 onward. Those college years where it's easier to make it. No kids, no jobs, no obligations. But those are interesting years for Penn State football.
Yeah. So, well, James Boyd, man, like he was on that. I believe he was on that '99 team, if I remember correctly, and he was, I believe, an All-American in 2000. So he was a freak of a player, and there's a lot of guys, because Penn State never wore names. So there's a lot of guys that never were, I guess, really remembered, if you will, because we didn't have names, even though they were phenomenal players. I mean, there's just so many guys. I feel like like guys like Danton Lynn, Stephon Morris. I feel like some fans forget about guys like that who played and were really great, and some had NFL careers because of like the names not being on the back, So he was definitely one of those
we know
guys.
everyone now. Yeah, and we know everyone now because of social media and how much information and coverage there are of teams, rosters, and players. And that's starting at high school with recruitment, right? Where, even guys like, Danton Lynn, you'd get the Streets and Smiths, recruiting or Rivals, recruiting magazine. You didn't have a constant flow of, hey, this guy's visiting this school and that, where you start to kind of hear their name junior, senior year in high school, then you potentially see them all the way through. So you have like almost like 6 years with that, 5 or 6 years with that player, within your view of a fan. But it's a different, the coverage is a lot more complete now. So I think it's easier fans to, kind of remember those players. And I mean, college is tough too, because I mean, you're cycling through now with the transfer portal and graduation, almost half your roster, 30 your roster or more every single year. So I think that's also kind of a chance for a fan to keep up with the influx of players.
Well, I don't know. We'll get into the NIL here, Matt, but I don't know if you're going to play the video game. That's a big deal. The NCAA football coming back out, and there are names on the jerseys on some of these teams. So,
yeah, I mean, I remember playing like Game Breaker '98, Game Breaker '99. Those games were great for the PlayStation, I guess, and people had Super Nintendo. I haven't played video games in quite a period of time, but certainly I know when I was in college, like my friends, roommates, housemates, I mean, that was huge. That's when they started to have that dynasty mode, and kind of the 2002, 2003 started to come out with more of those features early on without the names, but everyone kind of knew all the roster players and numbers, fortuitously lined up, 1 through 22.
Yeah.
So, I know a lot of people are excited about that, and I think it's going to be an awesome game. Obviously, a lot of the current players have promoted it, and I think it's fun, I think, to see the players excited about it. I think it's great for the fans to get involved and to kind of see, even the players like, oh, I'm a 98 rating or 94 or 88, and they, I think it's a fun way to interact with fans, and that to me is like a good constructive NIL opportunity where, the players just have to license their name. They don't have to put, time and effort showing up. They provide value to the fans in a way that they want to interact with the team, and it also builds brand recognition for the players, right? Like we just talked about, like, as you're a player, how do I really like the opportunity to not put a lot of time into something and build your brand and awareness with a huge audience through EA Sports, who has that audience,
right,
to distribute the video game, makes a lot of business sense for, I think players to be a part of that. Checks a lot of boxes, and I think that is one of the better, more strategic, good things that have come out of the open NIL era and opportunity here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just for us fans who, like me, were diehard players of NCAA football. I still have a PS2. My game right now is NCAA 08. I'm in like my 20th. So NCAA 08, that's 2007 season. So like Morelli and those guys. I believe I'm in like 2016 season. So I'm like,
okay.
And then I take all my guys from NCAA, put them into Madden 08.
Okay.
And so like I started like a cupcake team in the NFL and build it into this dynasty. And I've got like Dan Connor, Justin King, AJ Wallace, Mark Rubin, Tim Tebow's my quarterback, Derek Williams,
nice.
Obviously. They're all. I made them
Those
all
are
like
prime
number.
years, man.
Yeah.
That's
So the whole team's
Those
like
are the
Penn State
prime.
guys, pretty much.
Yeah, and that's what's fun. That's fans enjoy that. I mean, listen, there's only 12 or 13 college football games a year. What else do we do to get our fix the other
Yeah, that's right.
2/3 of the year? So it's a fun, constructive way to do it.
Yep. All right, Matt, you were talking about NIL and your thoughts on where we should go with it. You were kind of going off of what Austin had said, my co-host on Mark and Austin show, about NIL and the fact that it seems like the burden's being put on the fans, and that you believe that. Well, I'll just let you talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, I believe there's it, and I'm looking at this if I was running a collective, right? And if I'm running the collective and I'm managing the NIL funds, to me, you have buyers and you have sellers as kind of one part of the equation. And the buyers really are going to be the businesses and the advertisers, and the sellers are going to be the student athletes and the selling of their name, image, likeness, their social media channels, their personal appearances, and their influence. The other channel of revenue is you have direct donors, right? Where you have season ticket holders, fans, alumni who they're asking for money. And then the other channel is your mega donors, right? And every school has those. Oklahoma State has their T. Boone Pickens, right? And Penn State certainly has a number of big donors. And that I feel kind of separate and apart. But as a number, I understand where the perception is that, hey, we're going after to the fans asking for more money. And I think even there's a common understanding that, hey, listen, fans, we're paying for parking, we're paying for season tickets, we're paying for hotel, we're paying for swag, we're paying for flights, bowl travel, and donations to the school, Nittany Lion Club, quarterback club. There's a lot of different entities that are asking for fans' money. And it's pretty reasonable to think that the channel of direct to the fans is getting a little bit kind of tapped out, where a lot of fans are saying, okay, got it. Like, I got my season tickets, I got this, I got that. Yes, I can give some for NIL, but I don't see that as a big market cap that's going to help Penn State close the gap with other schools or to keep up.
Yeah.
So that's a channel that, again, if the collective wants to create maybe, and I think they've done a good job with this, creating experiences, right? Where, okay, you like before the Blue White game, they had a past and present tailgate at the baseball stadium. It was like $80 or $100 for a family. So it was a great deal. They had food before, food after, interaction with the players. I think they keep that up. They expand that. I think that's what fans want, right? I think if you give fans the opportunity to pay some money and get an experience, that I think is a channel they continue to go to. And I think they've done that by doing kind of like the Penn State night in Philadelphia they did recently. I think they've done it in D.C. and Pittsburgh. I think that's a good channel. To me, the big money is going to come is when I think the Happy Valley United acts really more like a marketing agency. Right. And what I mean by that is them going out to the market, right, as a kind of consolidated resource for many of the players to go to the businesses across the state of Pennsylvania, because the businesses are the ones that could benefit and profit from the association with the student athletes. And they're the ones who can drive the big revenue to make a difference, much more than me and you giving $100 or $200 in fans. The fans. And even we heard James Franklin kind of joke about this NIL deal with Wawa and Sheets. But the reality is, like, college students go to Wawa and they go to Sheets and they get their gas and they get their late night snacks. And those are two big brands. So to me, the agency should be hotly soliciting businesses all across the state to have them participate in NIL opportunities. And the collective should bring in former sports marketing people, agents, maybe some folks that have worked for, big marketing arms that have represented NFL players, or folks from the memorabilia side, like the Fanatics, into the equation to say, how do we go after these businesses to get them to participate? The Sheets, the Wawa, all those businesses across the state of Pennsylvania, not just in central Pennsylvania, but Philadelphia, northeastern Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. There's a lot of big businesses. Like I'll give you an example. I live out here in Hawaii. I went to one of the local banks, and they have a sponsorship with one of the University of Hawaii volleyball players. And there was you remember those Jordan basketball upper deck cutouts?
Yep.
They had one right there when they walked in. And I'm thinking, like, how does Penn State not have this with like a PNC Bank or with other business entities? And I think that's where there's the most room for growth to generate revenue for the collective, right? Going out and soliciting relationships with these businesses, because they're the ones that are going to pay 10, 20, 30, hundreds of thousands of dollars for marketing opportunities. And the collective should be going to the current athletes and saying, hey, listen, you want to participate? Great. You focus on your football, you focus on your studies, you focus on your personal life. Let us go out and then present to you and to maybe some folks that are representing you, here are the various opportunities that we've solicited from businesses across the country that want to participate, and they put together the marketing plans and promotions to offer the businesses to the players. Again, don't get in the weeds all that, because they don't want to do all that, right? The players, they want to focus on school, they want to focus on their personal life, they want to focus on what they're going on, and it really should be, I think, the collective's role to bring those opportunities to the table.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting take. Because there was a video of James Franklin that I saw, and I believe it was on state media. I believe it was a really good message. You know, he said in order to truly compete, you know, we're going to need NIL funding. We need to pretty much get up to date with NIL, and then recently there was a list. It was an On3 person. He said about our facilities being 9th in the Big Ten and 30th overall in the nation. It's the first time we actually cracked his list, I guess, in terms of facilities. I was actually in the facilities recently, and I thought they looked great. I mean, the weight room was very nice. I'm a weight room guy. I thought it was awesome, but the NIL and facilities, I think, are still a little bit behind, and again, they're asking the fans to come to these events, and that's cool. Mm-hmm. But I will say, man, some of them, for a lot of people, aren't very affordable. And two, you know, that just goes to back up more of what you're saying. You know, these local businesses, whatever it may be, I think need to be more involved, I guess, and that's where they should go, because I think it was Ohio State this past year. There was an event that I could have gone to. It was like $150 or something like that. And it's not that I don't want to spend that money or that I couldn't spend that money, but $150 just to go have some drinks with like a couple former players. I mean, is that worth it? And I'm a diehard fan. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, listen, there's fans in every income bracket, right? There's some fans that will wait for the $25 seats and sit all the way upstairs. There's some fans that will pay thousands and thousands of dollars to sit in the seats between the 50.
Yeah.
And I think that the collective has done a good job in creating those opportunities, because, listen, for $150, it's not going to be for every fan. But I give them credit. They're at least trying to provide value. They're not just saying, hey, give us $100 and we'll try to do something. And it's just like the same thing with a charity, right? Where people say, oh, donate money to this charity or that. And I think that a lot of donors say, well, where's the money going, right? Like, how much is going to the charity? How much is going to the cause? At least they're offering something. So I give them credit for that. And that's where I think they have to have multiple revenue opportunity channels that go after all different sectors of the market, right? Yeah. So that may be one that you mentioned, where they may want to be mindful of, how do we put out affordable opportunities that provide value to fans so they can interact with the team, right? Like that could be something they they focus on, because like any store you go into, right? Like you go in a car dealership, you can get a car for 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, 30,000, 100,000. And I think, that could be certainly an opportunity, and it's valid feedback. I mean, 150 is a lot for a lot of fans when you're paying for tickets and traveling. The same point in time, like I commend the collective for at least saying, okay, like here's something, right? You don't have to tailgate, you don't have to bring the food. All these players are participating. It costs money to get them there. It costs them to put on the event. But at least value is being, provided back. And I think fans would be more apt to. I personally would rather pay 150 to go to a tailgate and meet other Penn State fans and former players than just write a blank. Then just write kind of a blank check. But like that to me kind of goes to the bigger point of, do we want to try to, piece together a kind of a fragmented market, or do they want to go after where the big money is and where it's sustainable, right? Because I think when you start to create relationships with larger brands and companies across the country to do business with you, and them acting as an agency, that's a much more predictable revenue stream that is going to generate more revenue. And not only that, it's going to provide great experience for the athletes to how do I, interact with large companies, right? Meet people at these large companies. Right now Penn State could be a leader in saying, hey, this is like part of our NIL. We have relationships with these brands. We're going to get you working with their marketing executives teams and start to prepare you for the business side of football. So that to me, I think, is the bigger opportunity than trying to maybe figure out how do we necessarily try to cater to every single market, because a lot of businesses can't cater to every single market. So I think that's really where I think if I was in charge of collective, that's where I would try to, really shift the focus on and where we're trying to create more revenue opportunities for the collective and for the student athletes and present real quality opportunities for them to get and interact and do business with brands across the state.
Yeah. There was a Drew Aller signing at a store like 10 minutes from my house last year, and that was free. I think I was playing
Well, someone paid for it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's great, right? Like if a car dealership, I think did one with Nick Singleton. If someone wants to do one with Drew Aller, like those are all great opportunities, and it's easy for the student athletes to show up on a weekend, sign autographs, create that buzz, and create that opportunity, whether it's brand awareness for a dealership or a local business, whatever it may be. But that's something that Happy Value United I think has done a good job of trying to get those in the hopper, and that's just part of the catalog they should be putting together. Hey, listen, do you want the player to do an autograph signing? Do you want them to do a social media post? Do you want them to do an in-person event? Okay, do you want them to do you want them to be in a commercial, right? Do you want to show up for a grand opening, right? Do you want them to come to maybe do an address to your sales team, or do you want them to come to a holiday party? Again, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but there's a lot of opportunities that I think businesses across the state would want to try to incorporate and support, the Penn State athletics. So there's a lot of decision makers and a lot of business owners across the state that have graduated to Penn State or are fans of Penn State that I think would want to interact in a positive and constructive way in the NIL effort and move away from, I think more of what is going on currently with the current model.
Yeah. Like you said, someone paid for that, and that was cool. So I think I was playing in a golf tournament, so I couldn't go to that, but yeah, like the local businesses and like you said, having partnerships with single players or just having events, throwing more events, like the thing in Philly. I mean, that was a big event, and pretty sure Saquon was there, and I haven't kept up with the recent posts with all that, but yeah, there's a lot that they can do, and what you're saying is kind of go more towards the business partnership side than kind of asking the fans.
Well, I think that those events are great, right? And I think it's a great way to reach fans in those areas, right? Whether in Philadelphia or Scranton or Allentown or Central Pennsylvania or Pittsburgh or New Jersey. I think you keep those events up, kind of similar to the coaching caravan they had. And listen, I think they're selling out most of these events. So whatever that price point is seems to be, doing well. And there's also capacity only how many people they can have at, these events with a certain number of players to give the fans kind of fair exposure. You don't want to say, hey, it's $10 and you get 1,000 people show up and all of a sudden it is a different environment. So I think they're doing a great job with that. Certainly, I think to your point, what you're getting to, I think there's opportunities to explore kind of more affordable options for fans to kind of interact. But ultimately, I think that the bigger opportunity that value-wise and to drive revenue is how do you create marketing partnerships with the players managed through the collective with, your larger business entities, not only in State College, but also across the state as well. I think that's an area that the collective could explore. And I think there's also a lot of phenomenal Penn State alumni who have great experience both on the legal side of sports and the marketing side and this agency side that I think would be happy to come in and give their expertise, knowledge, and context to try to build that kind of channel of the collective more. And I think that's where you may see growth. Now, the crazy part about all this, Mark, is in 2 years from now, this may be flipped on its head if we get revenue sharing.
Yeah.
Right. And then the burden on the collective may go down significantly. So it's a challenging time with that uncertainty as well that the collective has to manage. But I think they're doing the best they can. And the other thing is that I would say is about, we're seeing those calls for donations for fans because we're on those channels, right? And I think that I understand because other schools are doing it, as well. And I think the expectation is reasonable too. I don't think Franklin's putting it all on the fans. I think he's also being very honest. Like, hey, listen, I don't think they care how they come up with the money, right? Whether it's $30 million $1 donations or $15 million $2 donations or $31 million donations by big companies. I think the messaging has been consistent. We got to get there, right? And we got to get there by combining all these resources. And, I understand being solicited as fans, but I think at the same point in time, if we want to get to that number, if that number is 30 million, I think the easier path is through, partnerships with larger corporations and being a little bit more bigger and strategic, that way.
So I have a question for you. The reasons behind us kind of being behind, that's kind of like we're addressing it right now.
I don't know. I don't know if we're behind. And here's the thing. I don't know if we're really behind.
Okay.
I don't know. And I'm just asking this question. It's like, where's the book on all this? Right. Well, it doesn't seem to be published publicly. We're behind Ohio State. Everyone's behind Ohio State.
I think Ohio State's number one.
We're not losing any players because of it. We may be losing out on some recruiting battles. But I've had a hard time gauging how far behind we are. Where are we compared to the rest of the country? That's the part that, and I think Penn State's been put in an unfair position where it's by default, we're oh, how do we compare to Ohio State? How do we okay, we're going to be behind.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know really where we are.
Behind them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is On3. This was fairly recently. Texas is number 1 with 19 million. Alabama's at 16. Ohio State's 13. We are 12th at 9.9.
What is that number, Mark?
9.9 million.
Is that just total NIL?
Yeah, so it is Power 5 NIL team rankings, and that's by allotted money amount. Now, yeah, I understand what you're saying. We're 10 million behind Texas, but I don't know, man.
So is everyone else.
Yes, and we're this is still pretty new, but I just want to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
We're not at 19 million like Texas. We're not at 20, 30 million. We're not number 1.
So number 1's Texas at 19.
Yes, Texas.
So I understand that correctly.
Yeah, Texas. Yeah, I can give you the list. We had it up. I forget when it was. It was a recent episode, but we had it up. We talked about it for a clip. Texas is 19.9 million. Alabama is 16 million. Ohio State is 13.6. USC is 13.5. Georgia 13.4. Colorado 12.3. That's insane. That Colorado is worth that much already.
Well, I'm curious, if you take Shedeur out of the equation, where does that go?
Yeah, that's pretty much Dion.
Yeah.
I don't know where they were before, but
they can't get out of their own way.
No, they can't. You're right. Michigan, national champions, 11.6 million. They're at 8. Tennessee, 11.6 at 9. Florida State 10.2 at 10, LSU 10.1 at 11, and then we're at 12 at 9.9. We're ahead of Oklahoma, A&M, Notre Dame, Miami, Clemson.
Yeah, so I mean, listen, where I would say is this: going off if those numbers are correct, yes, we are behind, but that's well within striking distance.
Yeah,
right. I mean, that's well within striking distance, and I think that can be closed just by getting few more strategic initiatives going within the collective. I mean, if those numbers are correct, it doesn't seem like we're that far behind. There's schools on there that are ahead of us that haven't had the same success on the field, than us. I mean, even look at Texas the past 2 or 3 years. We've had more cumulative success over the past 3 years than Texas has.
Yeah.
Right. And they're almost, they're significantly higher than us. Texas is going to be hard to keep up with. I mean, look at Texas A&M. Right. I mean, I think the NIL is one aspect, but the coaching, the relationships, the program that you're building, I give Franklin more credit for doing what he's doing. Now it's becoming a lot more clear to fans the less resources that he has. It's not drastically less, where he can't compete necessarily, where he can't compete at all. But there's a gap there. There's a gap there.
Yeah, and when it comes to Franklin, we've talked about it. Feel like a lot of fans don't like him, but I think we've talked about it. They dislike him for the wrong reason, or they dislike him for reasons that are not his strengths. So Franklin's doing there's 10 things to do. My bar is I want to win a national title or at least make the top 4 in the playoff. That's my bar. Mm-hmm. For success, consistently being top 4 or top 6 now, I think that's a good bar for success for me in my book, making a run at a national title. So there's 10 things. Franklin's doing 1 through 8, like recruiting, NIL, facilities, community work, being a vocal leader. 9 and 10 are making the playoff and then winning a national title. That's 9 and 10. Franklin's doing 1 through 8, and he's very good at that. I believe he's the Henry Ford book. I may not be good at 6 things, but I'm going to have the best for those 6 things, and they're going to be like buttons that I push. That if I engine makers, salespeople, factory workers, I'm going to have a button to push for every single thing. Franklin is that guy. He's a CEO. There's nothing bad about that. He's not the best game day coach, but he's good at a lot of things. Therefore, firing him is just not a good idea, I don't think. So, even though we don't consistently beat Ohio State and Michigan, we're getting there. So,
well, we've beat Michigan more than people have thought, and
Yeah.
I think if you remove the first 2 years when he was here and under sanctions, they've done a decent job versus Michigan, and obviously the wins and losses versus Ohio State. I would argue the 2014 game where they had the blown call on the two drop.
Yeah.
The one interception and then the one on the field goal, 3 seconds left. So fans are belly aching about the officials, but the 2014 game they're holding against Franklin, that wasn't fair. That should have been a win.
Yeah.
And then you have the games in 2017.
They were the national champions that year.
Yeah, and they should have never they should have never made the playoffs over TCU, and that they should have never beat Penn State that year. Obviously the 2017 game they're up by 17. The year after 10 at home. So, for where the gap has been in terms of facilities, brand recognition, the total coaching dollar pool that Ohio State has had to invest has been more than Penn State. And listen, I think what you're saying is fair. Is like a lot of fans are mad at him for, I think, a lot of reasons that are in many ways kind of out of his
it's
control.
He has his strengths and weaknesses, and they're mad at him about his weaknesses, and it's like he has 8 strengths and 2 weaknesses right now. So
yeah, I don't think that's an unfair way to put it, and everyone's going to have weaknesses. The only person who doesn't have any weaknesses just retired, and he's never coming back to college football again. And that's the reality. Listen, we're all upset at the head coach after losing to Ohio State and Michigan. It's the easiest target as fans, right? Because it's always viewed as the quickest, shortest way to win, but it's never actually is. It's actually the longest, most painstaking way to try to attempt to fix a problem and get better.
Well,
so
to go off of what you're saying, Matt, we'll wrap it up here soon, but I have like one final question for you. Saban's, I guess, if you will, weakness was the NIL era. He hated it, so he left. That is Franklin's strength, is the NIL era. This is his recruiting. I mean, his recruiting is unbelievable. I think he's the best recruiter in the nation. And I think he's put together one of the most talented teams in the nation. I think, talent-wise, who's better than us? I mean, honestly, in terms of just talent. Like, multiple 5-star guys on our team. And
see, I would push back a little bit on the Saban, because they still made the playoffs.
Yeah.
And if it still wasn't for, I mean, they gave that game away to Michigan, right? And, I think he was doing fine in the NIL era. He had nowhere to go but down because of the number of national championships that he's won.
Yeah.
I just think that, like, he was doing it at that point for a higher purpose. And I think if he was earlier in his career and maybe only won one national title, he would have figured it out and dominated it. But I think he was at the point where, like, I want to do this for a higher cause, not just to, like, kind of refigure it out.
Yeah.
So I think that's an unfair criticism of him. I think James Franklin, to your point, has done a good – where he's done a great job is pushing the school and the administration forward, right? Saying hey, listen, like, we gotta do this. Do you want to get in or do you want to get out? Because, it's the saying, like, the cost may be high, but the cost of inaction is going to be significantly higher. So we got to move forward. And I think he's done a tremendous job in that aspect of really pushing the school where we need to go, or else you're going to get run over by this train that's coming down the track, which is dozens of other schools that are willing to go, quote unquote, all in from a financial resources standpoint to win because they've been waiting to do that for decades.
Yeah, they are. There's a ton that he's doing right, Franklin, and like you just said, the like the facilities, man, the NIL, the recruiting.
The
that's
facilities are fine. I don't think the facility like.
Yeah, I don't think.
I've been there to see them.
I don't think
they're okay.
I think they're good, but I don't know. It's but a lot of this, man, in my opinion, the facilities are just fine. They are absolutely upgraded. I mean, I've been in every facility remake there is. I was there when O'Brien was there. I was there when Joe was there. I was there when I was just there recently with Franklin, and things are great. His recruiting is really good. The facilities are fine. I'll say, I think when people say we're behind on NIL, they mean we're behind where we should be, I guess, if you will. And I think that's a fair grade.
I think you said it really well there. We're there's the perception that we're behind where we should be.
Right.
And I think that's I think that's right. I think it's an excellent way to say it. But again, I don't think that gap could be closed. But I think recruits and their parents are going to commit to Penn State, not because the facility, not because we have 10 hot tubs instead of 8 hot tubs or 20 trainers instead of 25. One thing that Tony Johnson mentioned a while back, that Ohio State has this professional day where they bring in CEOs and executives that went to Ohio State that are speaking to the kids, and I think those are the types of programs that, as a parent, as a recruit, that Penn State, if they are, continue to build on that. If not, to bring it into the equation, like, we're preparing them to play football and we're preparing them to learn, but I think creating channels for them to learn about the business of football and the business of business is something that I think would add a lot of value to Penn State's total offering to get kids and parents to buy in. And that's where I think the collective comes into play, when they can make penetration with businesses and executives across the state to then participate in that as well. Then you have a complete package. Right now we're talking about adding real value to the recruit. We got 110,000 people at the game. We have a great administrative staff for you to learn football and to get your degree. But we also have a really nice structured program from an NIL perspective, not just to be like a bag person, but to teach you about the business side of football. And I think they have some infrastructure in place, but I think that could be the biggest area of growth, marketing, development, if they can get the businesses across the state to be strategically involved in that, and then they can take off, right? Because going back to donors for $100, $150, that's okay. That's not going to move the needle, right? That I think that's the biggest area of growth right there. Now you need that, because I want to go to the tailgate for $100 and mix with other fans. I'm cool with that. I love that. I think that's great. They got to build on that. That keeps me excited as a fan. But the real money is going to be, I think, more on incorporating the businesses into the NIL equation for Penn State. So,
all right, Matt, one last question. And this goes off of our whole conversation. We have the largest living alumni in the world. I mean, you're in Hawaii, and you're a diehard fan. That's literally the complete opposite side of the country. They're everywhere, our fans.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think, and we talked about this on previous episodes, do you think there's not as much rallying / money being brought in because, one, of the scandal and the way Joe was treated, and two, because Franklin isn't liked? And I don't think that's a secret.
So,
do you think there's less rallying because of that?
So I'll dissect that. You go to any fan base across the country, look at Kentucky with Calipari. There are some people who wanted him, who want him out. There are some people at Florida State, regardless of the scandal, that love Bobby Bowden, and there's some people who felt they should have moved on. Anytime you have a big alumni base or fan base, there's always going to be some fractional parts, right, that feel strongly one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
As it relates to the scandal, and Joe, you know, we've been so far removed from that. Are there a portion of donors and alumni as part of the, lack of a better term, old guard that have been disenfranchised by that situation? Sure. There are. I don't feel that's the vast majority by any means. I mean, listen, there's some people who are going to hold grudges forever in every walks of life. I mean, we have friends and family members that could like, there's always going to be some in that group, right? We're the largest alumni base in the world. There's going to be some that permanently hold the grudge, but there's going to be nothing we can do about that as a community to appease everyone, right? And it doesn't say they're right or wrong. It's just the perspective that if those people feel Joe is wrong and they don't want to participate, there's going to be almost nothing we could do at this point to engage it. But I don't think that's a big percentage of the fans. In terms of the fans who you mentioned, like, want Franklin fired, okay? There's a group of fans that want every coach fired in every alumni base, right? But again, I don't think that's the vast majority of most fans, unless you have a situation where, you know, like if we started winning 5-6 games a year for 2 or 3 years, then that's a different story. Then you could say, well, probably the majority. I don't think the majority of fans want to move on from Franklin. They understand what's going on there. So I don't think that's the case. I think majority of Penn State fans want Penn State to be part of the college football playoff. Have pretty reason. My expectations is college football playoff when we had to win the Big Ten once every recruiting cycle, once every 4 or 5 years. That was my fair expectations. I think that's a lot of fans' expectations. I think the noise that gets amplified on message boards after the game doesn't represent the full context of the fans. There's fans that are frustrated we haven't made the playoffs. Yeah. I mean, we're all frustrated. Players are frustrated. Coaches are frustrated. Administrative are frustrated. But again, it's like, well, what do we do next? What's the most sensible thing now that everything calms down a couple weeks after a bad loss?
Yeah.
And the most sensible thing the school has done is continue to stay the course with Coach Franklin and try to ride it out. But those parts of the fan bases, I don't really know. Like, what's like? There's not much we can do, and the majority of people are on board, and we're no different than any other fan base of having some elements that feel strongly one way or another. We can't appease the largest group in the world. I think should focus on the fact that I think the majority of fans are want to move forward and compete, and you know, that's the best we can do. You can only focus on how do we move the largest portion of the crowd forward, because you can't move the whole crowd forward.
No, you're right.
It's impossible.
You're right. And you know, I did see like highlights of the event in Philly, and yeah, that stuff is really cool. I'm glad they're doing that. I guess, I don't know. It just seems like people they want everything right now, and
everyone does. I want my dinner heated up in a minute instead of 10 minutes. I want my pizza in 5 minutes instead of 35. You know?
Yeah.
Like I went to go pick up a pizza last night, and it said the sign said, "This is not fast food. This is good food. It takes time." You know, like that's the reality of everything, right? And there's competition. There's competition. There's going to be schools or programs that want it more and execute better than us sometimes, and there's going to be some schools that don't execute as well as us. So, you know, I feel like my perspective as a fan has changed. I think one of the positive things about NIL and having the opportunity, and this is where I'm very appreciative of what the work the collective has done, is just the relationships I've built with other fans and people, even just like yourself. Like, this is what makes sports fun, right? And I think that's something that the collective can continue to focus on. How do we create opportunities just for fans to interact and have a good time? And not necessarily forget about the outcome of the game, but like, you know, this is, I think, what's cool about being a fan. I think this is something that NIL and the collective can do to kind of, bring fans together through certain networking opportunities or those events within the cities or pre and post game tailgate, opportunities. And, listen, we'll get there. Penn State will eventually win, a national championship. They'll win a Big Ten title. They will be in the playoffs. They're right there. I don't think we need drastic changes. I think we just need to make a couple adjustments in terms of trying to look at NIL channels that maybe haven't been fully explored, stay the course with what we have, and continue to push forward. It's not going to be easy. We're going to be in a very, very influx environment in college football. We may not even recognize it in 4 years or in 2 years, right? We don't even recognize it now compared to what we saw 4 years ago. Or 4 years before that. So, we'll see. But again, Penn State is going to have all the resources to complete. I'd rather be Penn State than almost 85% of the other teams in college football, right? I mean, when you look at the infrastructure and commitment, it would be hard to name not to have Penn State in your top 10 or 15 of terms of alumni base, facilities, infrastructure, fan base, and support to compete to win a national championship. It'd be hard to name more than 15.
Yeah, we got Mike Motti back. I said he was hired as a coach. Technically, he's not. He's basically a
analyst.
Well, it's more in the the fundraising role. I'm pretty sure, where he's kind of taken part lead in relations with recruits / NIL. He's basically going to be
like a liaison.
Yeah, he's basically going to be like a face of the fundraising / player to.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. That's where they have to be innovative and have people in these roles, because this role just came out of thin air. No one thought about this role 3 years ago. Yeah,
and Franklin, he's the kind of guy where he hires these former Penn State guys, and that's good. That makes everyone happy. But
because you need someone who cares, Mark, and Mike cares, and that comes through so authentically in the recruiting process.
Oh yeah,
and those are all like the little things, like Coach Franklin had said. We have to get better in all these little areas, and the authenticity that Mike brings to that conversation and the experience success. That's where I give Coach Franklin credit, where he's trying within his resources to try to get better in all these little incremental ways, and hopefully that starts, adding up. And I think we'll get there. And he's a great addition.
There's only one way to find out, and that's time as it goes on. So, Matt, it's good to have you on, man.
I always enjoy it, Mark.
Yeah.
I love the helmet, man.
Thank you.
I love that helmet.
Thank you. Yeah, I was telling you that it's one of my old helmets. I actually made it myself, and it came out pretty good. So it looks pretty similar to the real thing. So, but
that's good, man.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna, like you said, I'm gonna have to fill it up with some ink. Get some signatures and stuff. So, but Matt, we'll have to have you back on, man, like more often, especially during the season. Just to get your thoughts. Just to get your thoughts. I mean, I want to have guys like you who, know their stuff and can kind of give a different opinion besides mine and Austin's. I mean, we've had quite a few guys on here, but you're another diehard fan who took that extra step and is collecting stuff, and that's awesome. So hopefully I'll have some of that stuff on my background here someday. But yeah, man, definitely.
We'll get Austin on the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't think you haven't talked to him yet. So
no, we'll get him on.
But yeah, man. So be great to have you back on. I'll contact you about that. We'll set things up. But until next time, guys, thanks for tuning in. Put your thoughts below. Let us know what you think about Matt's thoughts on NIL and going forward and stuff like that. But Matt, again, man, thank you for coming on, and we'll speak again soon. So
you got it. Enjoy it, Mark. Enjoy your weekend.
You too, buddy. See ya.